Welcome back everyone. In today's video we're going to talk about loose tenon joinery, also known as floating tenon joinery, and how to implement it in your very own workshop. It's a great technique to learn and it doesn't take a huge amount of skill to implement it. It comes down to marking your pieces correctly as you would with any type of joinery that you use and getting the right fit. Now in this video I'm going to focus mostly on edge to face joint. In previous videos I've done edge to edge joinery using a very handy jig. If you wish to learn how to make a self-centering jig to do edge to edge mortising, I have left a link in the description below to that video. But in this video I'm going to show you how to use a plunge router and the edge guide that comes with your plunge router to do edge to face joints very easily and relatively quickly. Also, I'm going to go over how you can easily make loose tenons out of scrap that's just laying around in your shop. So with that, let's get to it. I've got a few things to get started today. I've got my Makita plunge router. Most likely if you've spent the money on a plunge router, it also came with one of these, which is an edge guide. Every operation that you need to do, you could actually do just with the edge guide and it works perfectly fine. Carbide spiral bit. This one is a 1/4 inch straight carbide spiral bit. That's what I recommend for this kind of operation. If you're doing larger mortises, you can get a larger or wider bit. In this particular example, I'm going to cut a mortise into the edge and then into the face of an adjoining piece. Now, because we're going to use the fence and we don't have a jig in this situation, this is too narrow to try and balance a router on. So you can imagine if I'm trying to cut, it's a bit unstable to try and cut on the edge. So what we will do is we're going to add a block to it. And this is just a scrap block that I'm using, nothing special. And that's it. So now I've instantly made my surface that I can work with a lot wider and thicker. So now we get this into the vise. Okay, so next what we want to do is we want to set up our router. So you'll notice that every router comes with center marks on the sides, and they also come with center marks on the ends. Pay special attention to those because those will be your best friends. They're going to make it super easy to line up your mortises. So the next thing we do is we add our edge guide. No, I'm not going to tighten it all the way. Now I've etched a center mark all the way through. So now I've got my fence riding along the outer edge of my board. All I need to do is take the center marks on my actual router to reference and line it up with the center marks on the edge of my board. And it looks like we're in good shape here. So I'm going to tighten that up on either side, make sure that it stays centered all the way through. Now my fence is set and that's it. I won't have to change the setting for my fence for the remainder of the operation. The next thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm not going too far. You can use some stop blocks to try and get a consistent cut on here. What I'm going to do is just make marks. So I'm going to do a start and finish mark. So I've got a start and finish mark. That's going to be the length of my mortise. The marks that I've made are going to help me with my start and my stop position, and I'm going to use that and reference that pattern. I'm going to do that with all my subsequent mortises. So I'm going to start with the lowest plunge depth. I'm going to do about a 7/8 plunge in total. That will be the depth of my mortise on this board. Of course, it's entirely a personal choice how deep you want your mortise. About a 3/4 inch plunge depth is probably the most desirable, but I'm going a little deeper. I'm going to go around 7/8. Now the one thing you want to make sure of is that you don't get any drift. What'll happen is the router will tend to want to drift like this, because routers will do that, and it'll depend on the type of router you have. Make sure you keep that fence right up against the edge. Don't plunge too deep on your first pass. You don't want to take too much material at once. So there's my first pass. So that's not too bad. Let's do one more pass. My next start position will be here to do the center mortise. So I'm just going to bury an inch here. I'm going to mark at 1 3/4 inch. That will be the length. I've got my start and my stop position. Now I'm going to mark for the last one. I started 5/8 from the end. I'm going to do the same thing on the other end. So I can use actually this line as my starting point, that is my stopping point. So that's it. These mortises have been cut for the edge. So with those cut, and I've got my center marks marked on this side of the board, I'm going to take my joining piece, put that side by side so I can reference all of these center marks. So now I've got the center marks. What's going to happen is I'm going to cut my mortises again using my fence, going this way this time. Now we're not going to plunge as deep. Again, like I said, the advantage of this method is the fence is already set. Okay, you're not going to have a problem. You're going to get matching mortises. Again, watch out for that drift. So when I make loose tenons, I usually make them in batches. And for example, I'll keep them in a jar like this. These are domino sized loose tenons, but I also have miscellaneous piles somewhere. I'll have loose tenons that are standard size. These are 1/4 inch thick. So I make sure I have quite a few of those. So depending on the project that I have, what I'll often do is I'll cut these as strips of 1/4 inch material, and then I will cut them to length when I need them as tenons to whatever depth that I'm working with on a given project. But what I'm going to show you now is I'm taking a piece of scrap wood here, and I'll show you how I make loose tenons. The width that I use most frequently is 1 1/2 or 1 3/4, so I'll cut this to 1 3/4. Inch tenons to match the 1/4 inch mortises that I've hogged out. They'll go in snug enough that I can pick it up like this. That gives me ample leeway when I'm trying to adjust and align my parts into the mortises on one side, and on the other side just line things up and we're done. I have a few millimeters, literally a few millimeters on either end to work with here when I'm just shifting around and trying to get the proper alignment. It's really simple to make these. Do you have to round the edges of your tenons to match the rounded edges of your mortise? Again, the answer is no, because you're not really concerned about the glue take-up on the ends. You're really more concerned with the glue take-up on the face. I've been doing it this way for many years, long before I got a Domino Joiner, and it's worked really, really well for me. Now it really should be a minimal glue up at this point. You don't need a ton, you need a small amount. can run a small bit of glue on the edges if you want that super strong edge. Let that set. The shape is very precise and unique to the domino itself. So the factory made domino is meant to fit exactly, and it does fit like a glove. Now, is that necessary for loose tenons in general? And the answer to that is no. So one of the techniques that, in fact, Festool even promotes as part of doing this in a smart way, just aligning your parts in a smart way, is you can cut your domino mortise for exactly the size of the domino you're going to use. But then on your joining piece, you can cut it slightly wider. Some people refer to this as leaving a bit of slop. Now that is so that you can shift a bit and get your parts into alignment very easily without struggling too much. If you try to do an exact size, even with the domino joiner, a lot of the time it's not going to work very well, or you're going to struggle a bit in trying to get the parts to line up exactly the way you want. Now I threw in the example of the domino joiner so that you could see the same effective joint in two different budgets altogether. One costs you almost nothing other than the fact that you need to have a router, and the other one you have to have a domino joiner and probably a dust collector. There's a very expensive method and then there's a very affordable method. Either way, the principles are the same. Really, once you get the hang of it, it is no problem. It can be applied to just about any project. I want to thank everybody who has sent me donations in my donation page and or have donated via Patreon. It's because of you that I am able to continue to keep making and editing these videos. If you want to donate to this channel, head on over to my donation page right over here. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. There are a couple more videos on this side you can watch. Until next time, thanks for watching, and have a great day.